Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Alan Watts. You spend your days stirring the waters of your own existence, pushing harder, calculating more precisely. But has this effort brought you peace, or has it left you restless and exhausted? How many times have you demanded control, only to discover that the more you grasp, the more slips away? Watts reminds you of a paradox. You think freedom is won through mastery of every variable, yet ask yourself, has your control ever made you truly free, or has it bound you in chains of anxiety? How many nights have you lost to plans unraveling? How many days consumed by the frustration of what will not yield to force? The truth confronts you. Forcing life is rebellion against its rhythm. You resist surrender, yet surrender is the very condition of. What if the exhaustion you call responsibility is actually self-betrayal? What if the chaos you dread is the ground of becoming? So the question cuts deep. Will you continue stirring muddy water until you can no longer see yourself, or will you dare to leave it alone and let clarity return on its own? Look at the age you live in. Everything urges you to push, to optimize, to accelerate. From childhood, you are taught that control is the highest virtue. Manage your time, master your career, force your destiny into shape. But ask yourself, has this relentless striving given you freedom, or has it enslaved you to anxiety? How much of your life is consumed by the pressure to make things happen? You measure worth in productivity, in goals achieved, in problems solved. Yet beneath the surface, why do you still feel restless, hollow, unsatisfied? You conquer one task only to invent another, and peace is always deferred. Is this not proof that forcing life never delivers what it promises? Alan Watts warned of this illusion, the belief that you can bend existence entirely. Force invites collapse. Control invites rebellion from the very depths you tried to suppress. What happens when you silence fatigue, repress longing, or deny uncertainty? They return stronger through illness, burnout, despair. You believe you are shaping life, but in truth, life is reshaping you in ways you refuse to see. Real freedom arises not from endless effort, but from rhythm exertion balanced by release, will tempered by trust. So the question confronts you with urgency. Will you continue exhausting yourself in war against life, or will you learn the courage to stop forcing and finally let it flow? To understand why forcing life enslaves you, you must enter the architecture of the psyche as Jung described it. When you push relentlessly, you are not exercising strength, but repressing truth. The unconscious does not tolerate this imbalance. It compensates. And every act of over-control tightens the chains of your shadow, your persona, and your failure to individuate. Begin with the shadow. Every time you force life, you silence the parts of you that resist. You tell your fatigue to be quiet, your grief to. But do they obey? No. They retreat underground where they grow sharper, darker, more insistent. This is why burnout arrives suddenly, why depression strikes without warning, why addictions form in secret. The shadow collects all you deny in the name of control and returns it multiplied. Ask yourself how much of your suffering is not random misfortune, but the backlash of what you repressed. Then consider the You smile when you are breaking. You boast of productivity while you wither. The persona is the mask you use to convince others and yourself that forcing is working. But beneath the mask lies exhaustion, resentment, despair. How many times have you said, "I'm fine," when in truth you were drowning? How long can you wear the mask before? Jung taught that the goal of life is wholeness, the integration of conscious and unconscious effort, and surrender control and trust. Forcing life halts this process. You remain trapped in one-sidedness, obsessed with domination, while ignoring rhythm. And what happens when you resist the very flow that seeks to balance you? You collapse. Individuation demands tension, but not compulsion. Effort, but not force. Jung warned that what you resist not only persists but grows stronger. Forcing is resistance disguised as mastery. You resist uncertainty, and anxiety grows. You resist weakness, and fatigue multiplies. You resist silence, and meaning slips further away. Every battle against life strengthens what you oppose. Is it any wonder you feel more trapped the harder you fight? Even projection plays its role. When you repress your own need for surrender, you call them lazy, irresponsible, naive, but secretly you envy them. Their calm reveals your compulsion. Their flow mirrors your rigidity. Ask yourself, how often does your irritation with others expose the very freedom you deny yourself? Here is the paradox. Both Watts and Jung reveal, surrender is not passivity, it is participation. To stop forcing is not to collapse into chaos, but to align with rhythm. You are not commanded to silence your will. You are called to let will serve life rather than enslave it. The unconscious is not your enemy, it is your partner. When you trust it, balance emerges. When you fight it, chaos grows. So the foundation is clear. Forcing life is not strength, but fear. It is fear of uncertainty, fear of weakness, fear of letting go. Freedom begins when you acknowledge your shadow, loosen your persona, and walk the path of individuation. You discover that clarity comes when the waters settle, not. Ask yourself now, how much longer will you exhaust yourself fighting life as though it were an enemy? How much longer will you mistake compulsion for sovereignty? And most urgently, will you dare to let go? To trust the unconscious, to stop forcing, and finally allow life to flow. Because once you do, everything changes, not by your command, but by the. His planner is filled, his hours tightly measured, his energy spent on forcing order. Outwardly, he looks disciplined, yet inwardly he feels suffocated. He tells himself, if I just keep pushing, I will arrive. But when night falls, he collapses in exhaustion, sensing he is no closer to peace. Was his suffering born from failure, or from the compulsion to force what should have unfolded naturally? She schedules every activity, supervises every action, corrects every misstep. She believes this control ensures safety and success. Yet rebellion brews beneath the surface as her children grow restless under constant surveillance. Instead of harmony, her forcing creates distance. Does she not see that the very control meant to protect destroys trust? Think of the perfectionist who never feels ready, never feels enough. He forces himself to achieve, yet the more he pushes, the more progress eludes him. His projects remain unfinished not because he lacks ability, but because his compulsive forcing turns work into paralysis. How many of your own dreams remain stalled for the same reason? Not because life denied you, but because you strangled it with control. Or take the person who forces relationships, demanding certainty, answers, permanence. Instead of love, they create pressure. Instead of intimacy, suffocation. The bond weakens not because it lacked potential, but because force made it brittle. Have you done the same? Driven others away, not by lack of care, but by the weight of your control. Each example reveals the same law. Suffering is multiplied not by events themselves, but by the compulsion to dominate them. Forcing silences trust, and without trust, the parent loses connection because she treats her children as possessions. The perfectionist stagnates because he treats creativity as an equation. The lover is left alone because they treat affection as a contract. In each case, freedom was possible. Now look closer. Do you not recognize yourself in these patterns? Have you not overmanaged your days until they felt empty? Have you not tried to control others only to find them slipping further away? Have you not strangled your own projects in the name of perfection? Or chased certainty in love until it dissolved in your grasp? How much of your suffering has been self-inflicted and it slips through your fingers? Let it flow and it carries you. Jung added that repression always returns. The fatigue you deny, the rebellion you suppress, the uncertainty you resist, Each comes back stronger. The worker's fatigue becomes collapse. The parent's control becomes estrangement. The perfectionist's effort becomes paralysis. The lover's demands become abandonment. Yet here lies the paradox. The moment you stop forcing, everything shifts. The worker who allows space discovers energy returning. The parent who releases control finds connection deepening. The perfectionist who accepts imperfection begins to finish. The lover who trusts silence finds intimacy restored. What changed? Not life itself, but the posture toward it. Warning, because they show you what happens when you cling to control. Burnout, estrangement, paralysis, loneliness. Invitation, because they show you what could happen. Ask yourself now, which mirror reflects your life more clearly? And, more urgently, how much longer will you keep forcing when everything you seek begins only when you stop? Forcing life is not random. It follows a structure, a cycle of inner mechanisms that trap you. Otherwise, you will keep repeating it under different names, believing you are progressing when you are only tightening the same chain. The first mechanism is denial of limits. You treat yourself as if you were infinite, unlimited energy, unlimited control, unlimited certainty. You silence your body's fatigue. You ignore your soul's need for rest. You mock your longing for stillness. But limits are not weaknesses. They are signals. Burnout, illness, despair. These are not accidents, but messages ignored too long. Ask yourself, how many warnings has your body or psyche already given you, and how many have you dismissed in the name of strength? The second mechanism is repression. Each time you force life, you push aside emotions that contradict your agenda. Anxiety, sadness, uncertainty, they are not gone, they are buried. But repression is never erasure. So your denied fear becomes panic. Your silenced grief becomes numbness. Your ignored longing becomes addiction. Do you see how what you avoid grows stronger, waiting to rule you from the shadows? The third mechanism is projection. The more you deny your own need for surrender, the more you resent those who embody it. You see laziness in the one who rests, irresponsibility in the one who flows, naivete. You lash out not because they are wrong, but because they remind you of what you secretly crave. How many conflicts in your life are really projections of your own disowned longing for ease? The fourth mechanism is rigidity of persona. You cling to the mask of competence, control, and constant willpower. Outwardly, you appear strong. Inwardly, you fracture. The mask protects you from judgment, but it also suffocates your truth. And over time, you forget the difference between the mask and the soul beneath it. How many years have you spent performing strength while privately collapsing? The fifth mechanism is collapse of rhythm. Life is balance, effort and release, action and stillness, order and chaos. Forcing destroys this rhythm. You overwork until exhaustion, then swing into avoidance. You overcontrol. Without rhythm, you live in extremes. All control or no control. All effort or total collapse. Is this not why your life feels like a cycle of overexertion followed by breakdown? Together, these mechanisms form a closed loop. Denial of limits feeds repression. Repression fuels projection. Projection strengthens persona. And every time you repeat it, the loop tightens. But the machinery contains its own antidote. Denial can become recognition of limits. Repression can become integration of emotions. Projection can be reclaimed as ownership. Persona can be softened into authenticity. Rhythm can be restored by allowing space for stillness as well as effort. The moment you stop forcing, these mechanisms lose their grip. Life begins to breathe again, not because the world changes, but because you stop strangling it. So the question presses, how long will you let this machinery consume your years? How many times will you collapse before you recognize the pattern? How much longer will you chase control? The choice is severe but simple. Will you remain chained to the mechanisms of control, or will you dismantle them by daring to stop forcing and finally letting life flow? If forcing life traps you in exhaustion, the path out must be lived, not theorized. To stop forcing is not passivity, it is disciplined trust, a daily practice of allowing life to breathe. The first practice is honoring limits. Begin by asking where in your life are you pretending to be infinite. Notice the hours you push beyond fatigue, the conversations you endure past honesty, the tasks you accept though your soul resists. Each moment of overreach is betrayal. Instead, set boundaries. Work for a finite time, then stop. Say no when your body or psyche whispers no. Will you keep collapsing from denial or begin living within the contours that sustain you? The second practice is ritual release. Each day, choose one task or responsibility you deliberately leave unfinished, not as laziness, but as training in trust. Watch your anxiety rise when you do not force completion, and then watch it fade when the world does not collapse. This practice teaches how many of your compulsions would vanish if you proved again and again that control is not survival. The third practice is shadow dialogue. When you feel the urge to force, pause. Ask, what am I repressing right now? Fear, grief, desire? Write it down, speak it aloud, give it space. Jung taught that repression multiplies, expression integrates. What truths in you are waiting for acknowledgement instead of suppression? The fourth practice is authentic speech. Begin saying what is true rather than what is pleasing. Admit when you are tired. Confess when you are unsure. Decline when you do not want to comply. Every false yes strengthens the persona. Every honest no loosens it. You think honesty will bring rejection, but in reality, false harmony. Will you choose temporary discomfort or permanent falseness? The fifth practice is cultivating rhythm. Structure your days not as relentless progress, but as cycles of exertion and rest. Work, then walk. Speak, then remain silent. Plan, then let go. Watts compared life to music. Its beauty lies in pauses as much as notes. Ask yourself, what would your life sound like if you stopped hammering only one note of control? Choose one area where you normally force money relationships work and release control for a set time. Do not micromanage the account, the partner, the project. Watch what unfolds without your interference. Often, you will discover life self-corrects more gracefully than you imagined. The psyche, like the body, tends toward balance when left unharmed. Could you trust life enough to give it one chance to prove this to you? The seventh, dedicate a fixed span, perhaps 20 minutes, to stillness without agenda. No phone, no task, no demand. Simply sit, breathe, and let the waters settle. At first, you will feel restless, even panicked. But with consistency, silence reveals itself. What would change if you stopped filling every moment and began listening? Together, these practices dismantle the machinery of forcing limits. Honored, dissolve denial. Ritual release dismantles compulsion. Shadow dialogue integrates repression. Authentic speech. So the challenge is simple but severe. Will you continue clinging to control until it breaks you, or will you begin the discipline of letting go? Remember, stopping the habit of forcing is not collapse, it is conscious alignment. Ask yourself, what would your life look like if even today you chose one act of release instead of compulsion? And what might unfold if you made that choice every day? Life forced is life wasted. Each time you push against the current, you drain yourself and deepen resistance. You call it responsibility, but is it not fear in disguise? You call it strength, but is it not exhaustion rehearsed until collapse? Ask yourself honestly, how many years have already been lost in this illusion of control? And how many more are you willing to sacrifice before you stop? Alan Watts reminds you, clarity comes when the waters are left alone. Jung warns, you do not end your suffering by conquering life. You end it by cooperating with life. You do not find freedom by controlling every variable. You find it by trusting the balance that unfolds when you release the grip. So the choice confronts you with, will you remain trapped in the cycle of overexertion and collapse, mistaking compulsion for sovereignty? Or will you practice the discipline of letting go, one limit honored, one truth spoken, one silence kept, one moment trusted? Freedom does not arrive in a sudden leap. It is cultivated in daily acts of surrender. The question presses, will you keep stirring muddy? Stop forcing one thing, just one. Let it be. Watch what changes. Everything begins here in the courage to trust what you have long feared. Life flows best